wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brainflakes here, back with another Eternal Return video. For today's video, we're going to be covering Alonso, the newest character released with patch 1.6. As a brief introduction, Alonso is going to be your standard melee initiation tank. He's pretty good at starting fights and he's pretty good at keeping people nearby him, but unfortunately, you won't find yourself 1v9ing teams because of sheer damage output. You're going to be finding yourself having to decide between initiation, healing, and who to focus on to best support your team. With all that aside, we can jump right into it and go over his skills. Alonso's passive is this neat little bubble that protects him from crowd control. This bubble refreshes a few seconds after not taking damage for a while, so make sure you drop damage completely to get it back if you want to kind of soak another CC from your enemies. The second part of his passive is going to be a heal that occurs every time you crowd control somebody. So these are non-unique instances of crowd control, so for example, if you do hit your ultimate on multiple people, you will trigger your passive multiple times. Otherwise, outside of your ultimate, you do have your Q, which is a single target stun if you auto with it, and your E, which is going to be a targeted dash route. Going straight into his Q is going to be a line skill shot that will tag an enemy for a pretty good amount of damage. For about 3 seconds, that enemy will be marked with something that gives you a movement speed buff when you run towards them, and if you manage to auto attack them, you'll do even more damage with skills with their max HP, as well as stun them for a very brief period of time. Your W is going to be this line AoE that will consistently shoot out these crappy little waves before ending in a much stronger wave of damage. You can recast this ability to get that stronger wave of damage, but you might not want to because it comes with a huge benefit of an 80% damage reduction from anything that hits you from the front. Now keep in mind, this front is a pretty narrow definition, so you want to make sure that people are literally in front of you to get this damage reduction off, or else don't expect it, and 80% is a lot. This is pretty much your one button wonder, especially since the 80% DR starts from level 1. And while increasing the damage and decreasing the cooldown can be nice, it's not like you're the main damage dealer of your team, so having your other 2 skills leveled up is going to be a lot nicer. Your E is going to be the most problematic skill of your kit. It's essentially a targeted dash which roots your enemy at the end of it, and it's a pretty far dash. Your opponent can break out of it if they break your tether, but when that happens, your skill just goes on cooldown. You don't move, you don't really do anything else, but it is important to note that the tether range is pretty generous, so odds are even if someone is dashing, if they dash out just a little too late, you will still catch them, which can be a pretty massive catch. Alonso's ultimate has 3 parts to it and a neat little quirk. The first part is that it sucks everybody on top of him, dealing a good amount of damage and obviously triggering his passive, which will give you a burst heal. The second part are these persistent AoE ticks, which will also heal you and deal damage, as well as slow enemies trying to walk away from you. And the final part is going to be an explosion, which will scale its damage and healing depending on how long you channel the ultimate for. So the little quirky thing about Alonso's ultimate is that if you cast it and then it's immediately cancelled, meaning no damage comes out, just the animation fires off, you will get the refund for free, and if someone forcibly cancels it, you will get half the refund back. So basically, if you use it and then let's say a Yuki manages to stun you out of it, it will go on 50% cooldown, which isn't that good because, you know, maybe you don't get to use the ult again for that fight, but you'll probably run into a lot of niche scenarios where it is useful and you'll be thankful that Nimble Neuron for some reason gave them it. With his skills out of the way, I'm now going to talk about his general loadout. So the build I go is going to be on screen. I'll link the build ID in the description in case you want to copy it directly from there. Basically, Alonso is going to be a tanky skill amp character. He will be building a mix of tank stats as well as amp stats to really get the best mix out of his scalings, just because his skills do kind of scale off HP and then amp, and then for some reason his E scales off of only HP and defense. So it's a lot of random numbers here and there going on, but that just makes his build path very open, which means that you have a lot of options, and this is just the one that I chose to go for. The reason why I personally go for a tanky amp build is purely because his amp scalings aren't super great, but they're just high enough to where having a bit of amp really helps him out. But you still really want to have tank stats because this character can't really run properly, which is an unfortunate aspect of his kit, but is more than made up for by how strong he is in that aspect he's meant for. I'll go ahead and list the upgrades right here if you want to see them now. Just to explain some of my upgrade options in case you're curious, I personally prefer Permafrost over Phoenix Glove just because I don't think Smolder is very good on Alonso. He doesn't auto quickly enough or easily enough to stack Smolder up quickly, which means that he won't get as much value from it. And the very small slow on Permafrost can be pretty nice for consistent chasing as well as just kiting around a fight in general. The cooldown reduction also opens up your build path a lot, meaning that you can run only Tindal's Monarch or run Taproot / whatever other CDRPs you want to go for. So the reason why I like Blazing Dress is purely because Alonso is pretty melee. I don't think he actually has the best base HP, but it's just something there because again, I don't think you're really getting focused early, so just having more damage will be more useful to get that scratch damage off during a fight in case things go awry. I like Astronaut Helmet a lot because it gives you the form of healing cut you need, and it's an insane upgrade over the Vigilante. And then Tyndalos Monarch is just a good upgrade from Tyndalos, and it gives you a bit more CDR. And then the boots can really be whatever you want. Boots in this game are very versatile for tanks. You can use Hermes, you can stay on hiking boots, you can go red shoes for more damage, or you can just go Taproots if you don't already have Tyndalos Monarch, or you can even go Mithril boots just because you don't mind attack speed that much. So really, any shoes you find outside of stuff like Blade boots or Alexander are probably going to be usable. Just keep in mind that these boots I'm showing here are probably more preferred than the other ones you might find on the ground. So going into the augments, I personally have been running Bitter Retribution just because you do get a lot of healing off from your passive, which in turn gives you multiple stacks of it. However, Diamond Shard and Ironclad are both very good options as well. I personally can't really recommend Healing Factor, even though it seems like a clear synergy with this kit. You're often the last person to die, which makes Healing Factor kind of odd because Healing Factor is usually meant to keep you alive because you're actively taking damage. But since a lot of people will simply skirt around Alonso and go back to his carries, you getting more healing isn't as big as you doing more utility or dealing more damage in the beginning of the fight or the middle of the fight. So with that in mind, you can really run whatever you want for the sub-augments. I personally run the Green Tree because it gives me access to Thorn Shackles, which is really good because you have so much access to CC, as well as Penny Pincher, which is also really nice because I'm going with mostly cheap upgrade items and that lets me spike a lot faster. You can go red augments, but I found myself doing plenty of damage without it, and I'd much rather just have the damage up as well as the cheaper materials from the kiosk as well. So for Tac Skills, I personally recommend going Emote Protocol or Protocol Violation, whichever the green drone thing is. It gives you a lot of HP for your teammates and yourself, as well as getting some random defense shred in case you landed on your enemies. I also have been trying Blade of Truth just because it is kind of nice for farming. Alonso's animal farm is pretty terrible, and Blade of Truth solves a lot of problems in that regard. And then the last, very much so experimental Tac Skill that I've been going is Electrical Shift, which is the mini dash you can get, just because it makes it much easier to land your E on unsuspecting 80 carries and squishy targets. Not really the best for fights, but a lot better for picking people off, so just something quirky I want to add in there. So before we go over his playstyle, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of the skill level order that I prefer. I think that W should be maxed last, again, because it doesn't really do much for your character overall. When you max E, you open up a lot of combo potential. You can potentially lock people down for nearly 2 seconds because of how the E and Q interact. When you E on top of somebody, there's like 0.6 seconds that they're still rooted for, which lets you easily land Q and then auto them after they've been rooted for a bit longer, meaning that you can get up to a 2-second catch on one target, which means that your initiation is actually quite insane for the character, especially considering that you can still ultimate and then go for another Q after the initial combo. Obviously, if you do all this, your peeling is going to be quite terrible, so you want to make sure that your ultimate is still there to help peel for your carry, but it's just options you have. I would say that you should always stall your Q auto attack because, again, your E roots for a really long time. I wouldn't be surprised if the E root was the first thing they nerfed, because keeping someone in one place for 2 whole seconds and no one really runs cleanse is insane for a character's base kit. The only other real comment I have about his complexity and kit alone is going to be the fact they can recast W early, like right after a really crappy wave goes out, just to cut the animation short, and also it saves you like 0.3 seconds on the cooldown. It's not really the biggest deal, but if you're bored and trying to optimize small things with Alonso, that does exist for you. Anyways, getting back on topic, I personally prefer maxing E first, in case you're playing with people that you trust, just because, again, it opens up that 2-second long lockdown immediately. Otherwise, if you're playing solo Q, I would say maxing Q first is probably more reliable because it gives you a lot more damage earlier. And then I would never max W second, third, or even first. That button's being maxed last, and I think your passive should be leveled anywhere between first, second, or third, depending on how you want to play the game out. I do think the passive is a lot of healing, but again, I'm still personally trying to find the breakpoint of where I'm getting the most utility out of his kit while still managing to stay alive in case I am focused. So Play around with it, let me know how you feel, and yeah, hopefully it works out for you. So again, the playstyle for Alonso is going to be very heavily dependent on how you think you should initiate or how you should peel for your carry. Your cooldowns are quite long outside of your Q spam, so you do have to choose if you want to catch the enemy carry and burst them down, or if you want to catch the enemy tank / frontliner and help peel for the backline, just because you can't really choose both. Your ultimate is really a one-time use for dragging people away or towards a team, which means that Alonso loves AoE characters, so stuff like Kathy, Abigail all appreciate having Alonso on their team because he makes it that much easier to combo off of. And on the flip side, he is really obnoxious for characters that have one big CC that they want to land because his passive is just gonna shrug it off, and since it's still a new character, I don't think a lot of people will be aware that they need to break his passive to allow someone like Aya, for example, to pop her ultimate and crowd control the Alonso off of her. He doesn't do a lot of damage, but he still does enough to barely be a threat to these squishier characters, so you do have to respect him to some degree if you do find yourself playing against him. That all being said, I think there's only really one interaction / combo you need to learn on Alonso to really succeed, and that's going to be the thing where you hit the E, when you root them, mash Q, wait a bit, auto attack them at the end of the E route, and then after that point you're going to decide between whether you want to use ultimate to continue the CC duration, or you're going to use it for a peel or something else in the mid fight. If you have emote protocol, you're going to want to drop it the moment your E lands, same thing with Blade of Truth, and then your glove skill goes in wherever you want to. It doesn't proc your Q mark, so you can use it right after you hit your E and your Q, and you don't have to worry about it proccing your stun, just make sure to delay that auto attack, the actual auto attack. So really, once you learn this E, Q, pause, auto combo, you'll find yourself doing way more on Alonso. It's really the most broken part of his kit, and I think if you're not abusing it, you'll find yourself being a lot less impactful than you could be, because instead of going for a 1.9 second CC, you're more using like a 1.5 second CC, which is obviously still quite good, but that's an entire half second of crowd control that you're now missing out on. Yeah, with all that said, hopefully this short video guide helps you succeed on Alonso more quickly. He is pretty straightforward, but again, there are some small quirks here and there that you should know about before you really invest more time into him. With that said, I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.